friends. Welcome to the Rhythms for Life podcast, where each week we talk about resilient rhythms that help you take charge of your mental, spiritual, physical, and relational health. This season's conversations come from our best-selling book, The Fight for Us: Overcome What Divides to Build a Marriage That Thrives. So grab your copy, invite your friends, and let's build healthy relationships together. Welcome back. I'm Rebekah.
And I'm Gabe. And this is the Fight for Us season where we are talking about our marriages, relationships. How do we keep strengthening them? Thank you for all of you for even this first week, just jumping in, being a part of the conversations, giving us your feedback, encouraging us as we continue to talk about ideas that we know are really important to each of you.
Yes, and the book is in your hands tomorrow. It's out this week. So if you haven't ordered, order it today. You get all the gifts, all the pre-order bonuses, and you can just jump in with this conversation. This week, we're talking about our origin story, looking back to move forward. So many people are like, why do we need to look back? Like, let's just leave that where it is.
I don't like looking back.
Yeah.
I was kind of raised that we don't look back because that's in the rearview mirror, and then you just become a victim and you don't move forward. So it was always easier to just pack it away and keep trying to move forward. But that didn't work so well in our marriage.
Yeah, and as we've learned in psychology, a very popular phrase is, if it's hysterical, it's historical. And I think for us, what we found is like, wow, we are reacting inappropriately to these small things, and we have big feelings about those things. And I think as kids, when we experience fear or some form of loneliness, and we're trying to process big stuff, but we don't always have safety or people to talk that out with, then we find our own ways as kids to survive. And part of that is to compartmentalize and move forward and make the most of it and move on. The problem is those tools that helped us as children do not help us as adults.
I know.
No, they start to hurt us because we're now in this intimate relationship with the person that we've chosen to spend the rest of our lives with. And we just want to avoid them and move on. And we're like, God's like, no, that wasn't the intention for marriage. It's to be fully seen, known, and loved in the absence of shame.
Yeah.
So of course it's going to be scary to go like, no, this is how I've always processed pain. I go do it alone. I navigate it in my brain. I might pray a quick prayer to God, but I'm certainly not feeling safe to talk to you about it or to go back to those places that, wow, that was really a hard journey when I was young, or that incident or that season was actually really hard to recognize, and I don't like what I feel when I go back to those things.
Yeah, and so as we wrote this book, The Fight for Us, we kind of have these three movements in the book. The first one deals with understanding what divides us, like why we fight, how we fight, all of that. But what we're talking about today is really the big movement in the book that's called From Fighting to Feeling. And we write three different chapters called Feeling Our Feelings, Your Origin Story, and The Deeper Longing. And we pull all that together to go where Rebekah was just reminding us that if we don't look backwards, if we don't deal with some of the trauma, some of the pain, some of the hurt, some of the ways we learned how to deal and relate to people, and we don't understand why we do what we do, our marriage becomes this place that these things just start to show up. And it can always show up in a way that's unhealthy. Mm-hmm. It can show up in ways we don't even understand. I know for me, I didn't understand what was happening. And God used Rebekah to help reveal to me the areas where I was overreacting. I didn't know I was overreacting. Like, this is just how I talk. I thought I was being reasonable and normal. And when you have that other person in your life that's like a mirror reflecting back to you, like, hey, that's not okay. You can't talk like that to me, or the thing you said, like you didn't think it sounded hurtful, but it really hurt me. And with humility, if we can get into the place where we can listen to each other, express back to us, hey, I know you don't think you're doing this, but this is how it's coming out. This is how I'm experiencing it. Mm-hmm. It can open up a new doorway of conversation that we argue. If you can get into that conversation, you are setting the stage for healing, and you're setting the stage for an abundant marriage that's not just, let's just get along, let's just do our best, let's just stay committed to each other because we got married and we're Christians. but you can move into a space where, man, marriage can get really fun.
Yeah. Beautiful, honest, true. The reason I thought this was an interesting data point, we just learned that the number one trigger for people in fights in marriages today is tone.
Yeah.
Literally tone.
Tone.
Tone is like 10x the biggest thing that triggers people more than the words. They're not even hearing the words or maybe even in computing the words because the tone has already dismissed and turned them off. And I thought it was fascinating, like that it's 10x beyond like anything you might just fundamentally disagree on. It's just the way in which we're saying something,
It's
the
so wild.
posture of our. It's partly because out of the heart the mouth speaks. So it's almost not the words are they're there, but really what we're hearing is the posture of the heart. It feels harsh. It might feel dismissive. It might feel threatening or scary or intimidating. And I just think we read all this, and Kurt Thompson talks a lot about the brain and how we process information and how it goes from bottom to top and then right to
Mhm.
left. And that's true. The right brain senses and feels before it goes to the left side of the brain, which is making sense of what you're actually saying.
Right.
So it's natural that, of course, I'm going to hear and sense your tone and I'm almost trying to read your body language of like, how does he feel about me right now? Before I'm even registering
Yeah.
what's coming out of your mouth. And
Yeah.
so the brain is wired for that to be true.
I
That's why
had
fighting matters. That's
I
a
d
big
I
deal.
didn't understand that in our marriage. I mean, this idea that Kurt talks about that you sense before you make sense finally makes sense to me because I see how Rebekah responds. I mean, we might be having an argument where we're debating the facts, and I'm like, I've got the facts right, and I know
And
I'm
he's
right.
direct, and I start to crumble.
Yeah, and so it's like I'm like, no, I'm just explaining the facts. We're in an argument. Like, can we just have an argument about the facts? And then I see her feelings starting to come into it, and I'm like, wait, no, let's hold the feeling
No.
conversation. That's a different
And
conversation.
I'll say things like, "Why are you mad? Why are you upset?" And you're like, "I'm not upset.
I'm
I'm
just
direct."
being clear.
And I'm like, "But it feels like you're upset."
But when I've learned to acknowledge Rebecca's feeling, like, oh, you're feeling overwhelmed by this right now, or this hurt you, and I can just acknowledge that for a moment, I can see her put at ease, and I can see us move into a more meaningful conversation and a dialogue. Now, that was something I didn't know. I had to learn that. Like, that's like a skill. And it's okay in marriages to learn some skills, even if they're not natural to you. And I know as a man, some of these skills have not been natural. It's been work, and it's been reminders, and it's been literally like making notes to myself about things I'm learning, like, oh, when I can approach a conversation like this, we move to a healthier place. So come on, dummy, like keep up with that.
No, I
Don't
mean,
don't forget this next time you engage with Rebecca.
well, and I think the argument has been around this idea like we're just so fragile, we can't handle like honest conversations. And the truth is, I think it's almost easier to be honest and receive honesty when it's still said with kindness. You know, the scriptures talk about how it's God's kindness that leads us to repentance. Well, that seems like an oxymoron. It's like he's still correcting those he loves. That person still feels loved, but God's going, "Hey, wait a minute. That's not who you are. You know, you don't want to do that. That's not in character with like what your heart is desiring." So it's good to have honest. We're not saying don't shy away from honest conversations, but be mindful in the way in which you're bringing those hard things up.
Yeah.
Whether it's with your parenting or with your spouse, it's the same. You don't want to push them away by tone when you're saying something that could actually be very fruitful.
Yeah. And so this concept that your emotions are a gift was something that was just new to me because I was raised in a family where we didn't talk about our feelings as much. I think a lot of us, even the generation before us, like
Our parents,
this
silent
wasn't
generation,
yeah,
right?
this wasn't normal to talk about it. And you could argue that we talk too much about feelings today. I mean, I might make that argument that this can
You
go
might.
overboard. And you can even see in
Yeah.
the research, like next gen's reacting a little bit to that like everything we experience in life isn't trauma. Like
Right.
like nothing's trauma if everything's trauma. So we have to be really careful about how we process through it. But emotions can be a gift. And that's what I've learned is that God gave us emotions not to make us feel bad, not to put us kind of in a depressed state because we feel hurt or angry or sad, but they're actually these gifts. They're signs to point us back towards relationship.
Yeah.
And the moment that clicked for me, that in our marriage, Rebecca, that when I felt something, anything, that was in some ways maybe moving me away from you, that if I could acknowledge the feeling and I could
Mhm.
name it, and then I could talk to you about it, I was creating a bridge back to
Right.
connection.
Right. And part of it was just recognizing what you were feeling. I think that was the first roadblock. It was like, I don't even know how to know what I'm feeling because we're so used to staying, in autopilot, right? Like for you, it was the Excel spreadsheet. You're like, I can logically tell you what's going on, but if I have to vulnerably share what my heart is feeling right now, like I'm not sure. Like that.
Yeah. And
And
Rebecca's referencing a counseling session where my counselor looked at me with a straight face. And after asking me a question that I responded to, he said, Gabe, I feel like I'm speaking to an Excel spreadsheet right now.
yeah,
And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And he goes, every answer you give me is like very formulaic.
yeah.
It's right. It's
It's
clear,
just the facts.
but it's no heart. I don't hear any heart. And if that's what Rebecca encounters every day in conversation is just a fact-finding mission and doesn't
Mhm.
get to see your heart, then there's a whole part of you that's missing
Right.
that you have to first recover so that
Mhm.
she can actually experience it. And that was really the journey. We write a lot about this journey of growing and understanding feelings and emotions in an appropriate way. I don't think in an outsized way that's
Sure.
over the top, but in an appropriate way that is healthy,
Mhm.
that I really had shut off. And when we went back in my origin story, we understood, hey, when you were 11, you shut off a part of your heart. You really lost confidence that you could trust other people
Mhm.
because of trauma that I did experience. And I write about that in the book. And by uncovering that, by looking backwards to that part of the story, you were a big part of the healing agent that God has used to help me reopen my
Mm.
heart and to
Mhm.
be willing to be vulnerable again.
Yeah, and that's a gift of marriage, that God will give us one another to soften those edges, to bring maybe some things that are dormant back to life. Like he uses us as healing agents. Sure, there's going to be friction because we're two people who with different origin stories and different value systems in some ways of like what matters to me might look a little different to you on the concept of money or parenting or whatever. But in general, it's to sharpen and to grow and to heal one another. And so the acknowledgement of the feelings are the big deal, but then also confessing them. Like, so first you gotta recognize your feelings. I need to recognize my feelings. In a fight, sometimes we're like, you. Like you do this and you always do this, and this is and then but what we need to do to repair is to go, in that argument, I think what I was feeling like if we take a break and we come back 15 minutes later or something, I'll go, I think what was really I was feeling was I feel alone in this topic that we're fighting about.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like we have a disagreement on how to handle a parenting issue. And then all of a sudden, like, you're like, no, you're going to break relationship. And I'm like, yeah, but I feel alone because I know this person needs this. And so just to come back and go, I feel alone. And so when we confess these things, like in the book, we talk so much about whether these are the 8 primary feelings: hurt, loneliness, sadness, anger, fear, shame, guilt, and gladness. These are from Dr. Chip Dodd. We unpack that every one of these sound negative except for gladness. So we're going to acknowledge that. But the goal is here that when you confess each one of those, they go from an impairment to a gift.
Yeah.
Right. So when I say, hey, I feel alone, it leads me from, oh, I'm just alone, whatever. It leads me from apathy to intimacy. Because now I'm going to Gabe saying, I feel alone. And you're like, well, I don't want you to feel alone. I actually agree with you in this. I want us to be united in how we parent. So just confessing it takes us from this impairment to a gift. So if it's fear, you have a root anxiety about something, and alone you feel anxious, but when we're together and we confess it, all of a
Yeah.
sudden it moves from that anxiety to faith.
Yeah. And so these are feelings. I mean, just like the colors, right? There's primary colors. These are primary feelings. It was helpful for me as a guy, honestly. I thought there was probably 100 feelings that when Rebecca would start expressing her feelings that she was in touch with. And it helped me through understanding that, no, there's a limited number of feelings we could get our head around. That was logical for me. That was back to my Excel spreadsheet. But it helped me to start to discover when I'm feeling this is what's going on. And so I want to invite couples to begin the journey of trying to not only recognize feelings, appreciate them, name them, but begin to talk about them and begin a journey that helps you uncover together why you're feeling what you're feeling. And it'll take you to a next level of vulnerability in your relationship.
Yeah, when we take a moment to breathe and consider what we're feeling, why this emotion, we're able to see what it reveals about us. The best, like the way we talk about this as we close this chapter is like that feelings are required material to be able to live the human experience. Not optional material, required.
Yeah.
And so if we want to fully live this human experience with one another in our marriage, have the fullness of flourishing in this relationship, feelings are required.
Yes.
Required. They're required to feel, they're required to be recognized and to be named and confessed to one another so that
Yes.
intimacy is born.
Yeah. And in our journey, that began by going back into our stories, our origin stories, how Rebekah was raised, how I was raised, unpacking that together. We want to invite you as couples to begin that journey, to consider what was that beginning story like for you. Our next episode, we're going to talk with Hillary Scott, the lead vocalist for Lady A, Grammy-winning musician, and her husband, Chris Tyrell, where they really open up about their origin story and how uncovering one another's origins led them to better understand why they were having fights early in their marriage, some significant moment where they had division that they started to unpack more because they understood each other's story. And then I also want to invite you to buy the book. Tomorrow's the day, Rebekah.
Yes.
It's a big moment, right?
Big day, big day. Book birthday.
Pray for us. Pray for this work to go forward to reach couples that, as we know, so many are on waiting list for counseling and don't always know where to go, that this could be a resource. Invite your friends into this series. When you order the book, you can get access to our masterclass we've done called The Fight for Us. It's 3 sessions, about 12 minutes each, that are just a beginning part of your journey while you're waiting for that book to ship, that you can begin the journey on. And we also have an emotional health series for marriages that takes you through each of these 8 feelings we're discussing today and gives you about 15 minutes of conversation with Rebekah and I and counselor and coach Chip Dodd talking about those feelings. So there's a lot here for you to be able to unpack as you go on your journey together as a couple. It says we're going to fight for our marriage. We're going to fight for us because we know it matters not only to God, but it matters to our children. It matters to His vision for our life, and that there's an enemy trying to steal that, and we don't want that to happen. So we're going to take the steps we can to fight.
Yes. So with tomorrow being launch day, I'm just going to read a little tiny thing as we close, and this will be our closing. It's a blessing for those who fight for love. We felt compelled as we closed the book to write a marriage blessing. And so if you want to if you're driving or you just want to exhale for a minute, just listen. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll read a little bit more and then weeks to come. But this is what I do want to encourage us with. May you lay down discord and pick up unity so that your joy becomes complete. May you hang in there for the joy of redemption, even when you're tempted to run. May you own your neediness with vulnerability, especially when you are scared. May God's kindness bring repentance so that your hearts stay tender toward one another. May you apologize first and forgive quickly, keeping no record of wrongs. And may you choose to trust each other, especially when it requires risk. So that is our prayer for you today. That you would own your neediness, that you would say those things out loud, that you would confess them to God and one another, and that you would choose to trust even if it requires risk. So we will see you on Wednesday with this week's episode.